Welcome to Highland Hedgehog Farm. Today we're going to show you how we make kale chips from the garden to the dehydrator. Come along and grow with us.
This is our kale bed that went through the entire winter on what we call low tunnel hoops with 2 levels of fabric to keep the temperature high enough, although kale can take freezing and thawing several times during the winter, which this did. We took the fabric off about the end of February, and these were only about this tall. And you can see we've cut down some, but look at the size of the leaf here. This is great kale chip making. Might be a little tough for just eating, sauteing and eating, unless you make sure you take this stem out. But kale is a very easy crop to propagate, and just 6 kale plants can keep you in kale salads and sautés for a long time. These have actually started to bolt, and they create little, almost like broccoli florets that are really good sauteed or even just fresh in salads. I'm going to use this little leaf in the salad. I won't make a kale chip out of it, it's not big enough, but this I will also use in the salad. I'll cut off the little leaves and cut off the floret. I love them, they're really good. Whoever thought I'd be eating kale florets. Now, what I'm also doing is, we haven't really picked a lot of stuff here, and we've got some yellowing leaves which we're going to give to the chickens because they love their kale. So we have to get in under here and get these out of here, like this one. That's no good, and it'll attract, eventually when it gets a little warmer, it's going to attract slugs. And we're going to keep this going as long as we can, which I'm not real sure, probably another 2 months until it gets hot. And then we've got some other ones we planted indoors and started indoors in our seed starting area. And we're going to use those out here. Size of that leaf. That'll make a lot of good kale chips, because you cut them down to about the size of maybe your hand, and then they shrink in the dehydrator. But we'll show that step along the way here too. We're going to continue. We had a huge kale harvest. This is the 3rd bowl of kale chips that I'm going to be making, and I'm going to walk through with you on this as to how we do it in the dehydrator. And we've been experimenting with different onion powder, garlic powder, and mixes. And we've decided we like best this everything bagel seasoning. It's got, let me read you the ingredients: sesame seeds, salt, dehydrated garlic, dehydrated onion, black sesame seeds, and poppy seeds. And I'll put it in our little grinder, about a tablespoon, and once the oil is massaged onto the kale chips here, I will put the everything bagel seasoning on it and mix it in really well, and we'll put it in the dehydrator. So come along for this great journey. It makes very good chips but I've torn most of the kale into, this is a little bit on the large side, into the size about of my hand is the best size. But I am using all the kale on the leaves, and sometimes you get little pieces like this, which are just as good and are just as tasty. So I have a whole bowl here.
Is it just the leaves, or do you use the spines of the kale too?
It's just the leaves. I use just the leaves. The chickens actually get the spine.
Can you show us how you take the spines out?
Yeah. I usually use a cutting board.
I think there's a knife behind you.
Not really. I put them back. what I usually do, a lot of people just go along and use their fingers along like this, but I like to flatten out the leaf, and that's why I like this particular kind of kale that we've got. It's flat leaf. It's not the real curly, frilly leaves that some kale is. You can use the curly, frilly leaves, but I just go along the spine and just cut it off, and it comes off in pretty bite size, because these will shrink in the dehydrator. They shrink. So you're making, you know, kale leaves that are like this to go into the dehydrator. So what I'm going to do is, I have no real measuring situation, and you don't need a lot of olive oil. I'm just going to pour a little bit like that, and then a lot of people call this massaging the kale. I'm going to make sure that this olive oil gets through everything, and my hands look wonderful afterwards because they're all covered in olive oil, which is good for you. Now this is the spice, and I'm going to put a tablespoon in the grinder. We have one specific grinder here. It's a coffee grinder. It is a KitchenAid. It's a small grinder, and it will grind. I use it for grinding nuts, and I use it for grinding oatmeal when I want to use a finer than the whole oats in a recipe. And I'm going to use it to grind this up.
We have one that we do for coffee and one that we do for just spices, because the coffee flavor will never get out of
it. And then I'm going to just spread it in here. That's about half of it. Mix it around. Make sure it's not all in one leaf. And then put the rest of it in here.
So we're in our basement now, and we actually have a second living room down here where we have our grow lights and everything set up, and our indoor starting right off of our screened-in porch in there. And then we have a bedroom through that door. And we've got a little table set up here with a plastic tablecloth on top of it to keep the table clean. And this is kind of like our dehydrating station. And we do this partly in the basement because that way we don't get as much heat produced, especially during the summer, in our living room upstairs where we are most of the time. So we've got a little crock pot so we can reduce stuff and do fruit leathers and keep stuff warm if we need to. We've got a little turnstile. We've got all of our sill plats for the dehydrator, and then we've got our Excalibur dehydrator, and of course our rescue turtle down underneath, because everybody needs a rescue turtle. So Mom's going to show you the rest of the process for the kale chips right here.
I lay out individually the leaves. Now some people, when they make their kale chips, just plunk them on and kind of spread them out. But I like my kale chips kind of flat, and so I can think that they're real chips. The reason we also do this in the basement is that some of the herbs and things that we dry are very, very fragrant, and I don't want the whole house smelling like uber garlic.
We can open the door right here.
Yeah, we can aerate the basement. We have a couple of fans down here for our plants when we're doing our starts, and we have doors to the outside right behind Brittany here, and through those doors and out to the back over in the other bedroom there. So we can get a good cross ventilation here, and that'll help in the summer when we're doing dehydrating and such. Now I lay them out single, and you know, I don't worry too much about them overlapping some. I don't do like a clump like that, because then they stick together, and the dehydrator is actually cooking them, and I don't want like 4 layers of kale chips, you know, as one piece. So this kind of separates them. I like to, when there's something that's like this and thick, I like to leave a space sometimes in between unless I absolutely have to do every single one. And when you slide them in, you have to get them to lay flat.
Do it one down.
Yeah. And then the next one I'll do down below that. Now,
all right, so that big tray or that big bowl of kale gave us 4 trays of kale chips.
Okay. Now what I do is the front goes on here, and we turn it on to, I turn it on to 125, and I will leave it overnight. Now, if you don't have a dehydrator, there's no reason why you can't do this if you grow kale and spinach in your garden and start providing for your own food sustenance. You can get your kale going and do it in 100 or 125 degree oven.
Or as low as your oven goes.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to watch it. I haven't done it in an oven. Probably about the same thing, 5 hours maybe. Check it and see if the kale chips are a little bit on the crunchy side. Now this is what I did yesterday. Some of what I did, I had 2 bags like this. 1 bag is gone. And this is what they look like when they're done. Okay.
Here's a crisp.
Mm-hmm. And you can see the spices on them. This one is kind of bent together. And when you bend them over and double layer them, it's going to take longer to dry them, to dehydrate them. And you have to get used to them. First couple of times you try them, it's going to be like, that's different, but tasty. And then, oh man, you get addicted. And they're so good for you. Much better. Don't make the liar out of me. Here. Here. Good boy.
Even the cat likes them.
Here. Hi, welcome. Hi. Stop. Well, hello.